Look, I'll take the lolly out. There you go.
What a way to start a podcast. I'll take the lolly out of my mouth.
Better than the plum.
Honorable Robert Borsak, back on the Blood Origins podcast, return guest. The last time you were in this podcast here, this is how good of a brain I have. We had literally just sold. We were moving our house from Bay St. Louis coming up to Memphis. The entire house was empty except for a bed in the guest room. And I was lying on the bed in the guest room. I didn't have the headset. I didn't have the microphone. All I had was my laptop and my laptop microphone. And that's when we podcasted for the first time.
Oh, you treated me so badly. You didn't have the professional setup. What's going on?
But I did record a podcast with you in bed with you. So.
Oh, can I go upstairs?
Welcome back, Robert Borsak. How are you, my man?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really quite good. I was just chatting earlier. I've been to Mexico for a hunt, and also while I was there, I went out to West Texas and shot an oudad just out of Sanderson there.
Nice.
Yeah. It was a nice hunt. I was there for 3 days. Didn't see a lot of oudad, but what I saw was good, and I shot a nice ram.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's a poor man's sheep hunt, and it is certainly, it's one of the pieces of content that we've created, connecting the dots in West Texas, and it's the animal that is driving, it's the cherry on top, really, on top of people's cattle farming operations that sometimes is the thing that keeps them alive for that year, and the other years it's the cherry on top of the sundae.
Yeah, it's they're there, and I don't know that how many would be on this ranch. I was on a 400,000 acre ranch apparently, and it's
there's some monster ranches out there, just 120 sections, 200 section ranches. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, Robert, if for those that don't know who you are, you want to introduce yourself?
I introduce myself. I don't like talking about myself very much, but
what do you do? What do you do
these days? Look, I'm an old CPA as an accountant, but I retired back in 2002. But these days, certainly since 2010, I've been in the New South Wales Parliament in the Upper House, and as a member of the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. And as the name implies, we advocate for shooting, hunting, fishing, farming, and usually all of the things that happen in rural and regional New South Wales. We also get involved.
You're the party leader in New South Wales, right?
Yeah. We've got there's two of us in the upper house. We've had members in the lower house, but they've decided to go their own way over time, and that's good on them for doing it. But in the end of the day, the place to be if you want to protect the rights of shooting and hunting. And keep in mind that in Australia, and especially in New South Wales, there's a very great push to try to remove firearms out of people's legal hands, and also to try to stop hunting and to stop fishing, recreational fishing. And we've seen all of that happen in the last, I suppose, 14 years. The previous government especially got very, very, very touchy about wanting
got touchy
to...
about like blue grouper, didn't they, or something like that?
That's the latest one. Yeah, that's right. The blue groper is a fish that the greenies and the antis can use as an icon, and it's not been legal to spearfish them for many years, and most spearfishers don't touch them anyway. But what happened was we had a Kiwi turn up and kill one with a spear gun. It got in the papers, the same old nonsense, and all of a sudden, ooh! So they
it's the same nonsense as this lady who picked up the baby wombat. You saw that nonsense?
Yeah, I didn't actually see it, but I heard about it. I mean, really, they make a song and dance out of it, but in the end of the day, the wombat went back to mum, and the wombat ran back into the bush.
Yeah, look, I'm not, people online are saying, look, Steve Irwin did it as a job, essentially. I took offense to it because it was this hunting influencer from the States. And then there was
I didn't realize that.
It was a hunting influencer from the States. And then some veterinarian from, I think it's Wires, I'll have to remember the name, it starts with a D. Anyway, said, this is what we expect from hunters. That was the quote. This is what we expect from hunters, disrespecting wildlife.
Okay. Well, what else do you expect? And that is the sort of thing that we have to put up with here every single day. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and it's not just me, but if our party hadn't been in the Parliament, we would have lost virtually all of our hunting. We would have lost all our firearms. We would have lost all our recreational fishing years ago. And I might just mention that this year, this month, in fact, is our 30th anniversary of being represented in the New South Wales Upper House.
Wow.
30 long years, yeah, that we've been fighting for the rights of shooters, fishers, hunters, and a lot of other people too in related areas in the rural and regional New South Wales.
Are there any other party members from the SFF coming up in the ranks kind of thing and potentially challenging for seats?
Excuse me. At every election, we certainly state elections. Obviously, we contest the upper house, and we do contest lower house seats as well. I think there's 92 or 93 seats in the lower house, and at the last election, I think we contested about 25 of those.
Wow.
And again, those seats we contest are usually rural and regional areas. There's no point, for example, running a candidate in the middle of Sydney. It's all too woke and it's all too lefty, and you can pretty much. Our vote starts at 0 in the middle of Sydney and goes out as you go out west, as you radiate around the state, the vote, and get away from Sydney or the coast, we get a better vote, of course.
So none of the 25 won a seat?
No, not in the last election. But 2019, we actually won 3 seats. That's what happened at that stage. We won Orange, we won Murray, and we won Barwon, those 3 seats. And then those 3 members went mad and decided to go independent. So they decided they didn't want to represent shooters and fishers anymore. They were too self-important. You know, the age of social media gives them an opportunity to promote themselves. So they use the party's money, they use the party's blood to get themselves elected, and then just say goodbye. But
anyway,
that happens.
Toe a rhetoric line that is very similar to SFF.
Oh, they still profess to support shooting and all that sort of thing, and I believe they will. I don't have an issue with it. But all parties see this, no matter whether you're a small party or a large party. There's always a big turnover. People are always coming and going. It happens. I don't think it happens so much in American politics, but it certainly happens a lot in Australian politics.
Robert, so for everybody's understanding, edification, explain. So you are the Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers Party. Obviously, by the name, you obviously have conservative values. In Australian politics, give us the 2 major parties and where are their policy lines?
Well, I suppose it depends on where you sit. Sorry, what sort of policies you're talking about? If you're talking about economic policies, the Labor Party.
No, conservation policies, like let's just talk about typical wildlife conservation policies.
Look, conservation policies in Australia really centre around obviously seeking to conserve the native environment and the native animals and the unique marsupials, for example, we have in Australia, and both parties would profess to support that. I think that'd be pretty bipartisan.
The National Party and the Labor Party.
The National Party and the Liberal Party form a coalition.
Okay.
They are laughingly referred to as conservatives, and the Labor Party, of course, are on the left. They're the Labor Party, so they're, I suppose, your socialist type people, but they're very much in competition with the extreme left, which is the Greens, of course, and we have a number of Green members in the New South Wales Parliament. We have 4 in the upper house, and we have, I think, about 4 or 5 in the lower house. So that's where they sit in that spectrum. And anything that's not native, it's just to be treated as a pest. It's just to be treated as rubbish, and it's just got to be got rid of. Doesn't matter whether we poison it, we shoot it. Anything they can think of. If it hadn't been a wombat, but if it had been a rabbit or something like that, you would not have had any coverage on social media at all. Because it's a pest, so therefore it's a lesser being. And that's the way they treat it. That's the way they do it. And so you've got the 2 major parties have basically got a bipartisan approach to conservation of native species. And you see that, for example, with what's been going on in Kosciuszko National Park and the culling of the brumbies down there.
So that's the most amazing thing. So let the cat out the bag. We're starting to get involved in, I'll say, wild horse work in the States. People will correct me and say, you mean feral horse work in the States. And the example that I told this lady who'd been working in horse management with the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, for 30 years, I said, it's funny that here in the States, it's illegal to kill a horse. Illegal. At the federal level. I said, do you realize that probably the most sort of left-leaning country in the world, i.e. Australia, that has the most left-leaning individuals, greenies, involved in politics, the greenies are saying shoot the horses. I was like, right?
Yep. It just shows how politics can change, doesn't it? The horses here, especially in the park, are very much being protected by people who see them as a cultural icon. And what has failed, and that's really the niche that we will work into, is that there's been no real management of those horse populations in that park since they got rid of the high country grazing about 40 years ago. And I don't think they were obviously culling them at that stage. But what used to happen was, and I've had it explained to me by a farmer who was brought up in that high country, that they used to have regular Brumby roundups. Okay,
Yep.
And that all finished when everyone got kicked out of the park, and you're all Satan, go away. We're going to protect this park, and of course, what's protection leads to a population. I think last year when they did, or the year before last, they estimated the population between 18 and 26,000 horses in the park.
Holy stuff!
And that is a delicate environment up there. It's not dry land. It's the highest snow plains that you can get in Australia. Kosciuszko, Mount Kosciuszko is the highest peak in the country. It is a very, very delicate area. Obviously, like anywhere, any environment like that, growing seasons are very short, and horses with big hooves can cause a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. Is the government culling horses today?
Yes. Basically, I think what happened was that if you go back to the previous Labor government, so you're going back about 15 or 16 years, maybe a bit longer, they were culling horses in another national park, and what happened was that they had cameras on the skids and cameras on the rifles, and some of that video got out because they're trying to kill horses with 308s, would you believe? What happened, of course, that caused a huge uproar. The RSPCA, the Royal Society for Protection of Animals, whatever you call it, they said they were going to prosecute the minister. So, cut to the chase, what happened was they put a blanket ban on the culling of horses, and that was for the whole state. So what happened, of course, is that the only form of management that was really available then in Kosciuszko was the live capture. And of course, you try to manage those horse numbers, trying to capture, a wild stallion or a large heavy mare. It's nonsense. It doesn't work. They were not allowed to ground shoot, and they were not allowed to helicopter shoot. That was it, bang, finished. So for best part of 15, 16 years, with good seasons on and off, but the population just keeps growing. And you know yourself, once population numbers reach a certain level, they boom. And that's what was happening in the park. And this government, which is a Labor government, took the decision I think basically 2 years ago, that they weren't going to put up with this. It was causing material damage to the park. I had representations in my office. We, as a party, support the culling, but we don't support helicopter shooting. Our attitude is, well, you should have been doing this properly first. And I must admit, they did start and were doing a lot of ground shooting, but then they said to me, we're not killing them fast enough. That's really what the answer was.
Yep.
So that's why they got in last year, and they culled about 8,000 or 9,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And because we had an inquiry, there's a animal welfare committee that I sit on, and we had an inquiry into the Brumby shooting. And I won't bore you with all the detail of that now, but it's online if anyone wants to go and have a look at it. And the statutory limit that was placed on the number of horses in certain parts of the park is 3,000 now, and that's what they're working to. So they're not going to shoot them all out and make them extinct. Although the Greens want every single one shot. That's their every single one.
That completely blows my mind. It completely blows my mind.
Well, yeah. Well, and this shows.
Can you introduce me to a greenie that would come on here and talk to me about horse culling?
I've got exactly the right one for you to talk to. I've got exactly the one for you to talk to. I will.
I'd love to
introduce you to her, and she knows everything, and she'll tell you a bit. She'll tell you she knows everything.
I would love it.
We're all stupid, and the reality is that we're the real conservationists. We just don't talk about it. We actually get out and do it.
Mm-hmm. And talking about getting out and doing it. What preempted this podcast between you and I, which is long overdue, by the way, is Ned McKim and the Australian Pig Doggers and Hunters Association doing the Great Australian Pig Hunt.
Mm.
What do the greenies say about that? Have you heard any whispers about that?
Oh, well, they hate it. Anything. Yes, I have. They don't like.
How can they hate that? Because it's a feral species.
Well,
they can't hate that.
No, that's right. But the fact that hunters are doing it, they don't want you to enjoy it. See, you're not allowed to enjoy it. You're not allowed to practice our culture of going out hunting. And the fact that there's a benefit in doing it, well, that'll have to be sacrificed, because it's more important for us to get rid of your culture than to worry about what the pig damage is. Because they don't like farmers, they don't like pigs, they don't like shooters, they don't like hunters, they don't like fishers, they don't like anybody that doesn't live in and around Newtown and places like that in Sydney, in the inner city.
But they do like native biodiversity, they do like ecosystem health, they do like all these things that are an outcome of the activity of hunting.
That's right, and it's the failed, and the horse example in Kosciuszko is a perfect example of the failed management paradigms that Australia functions under, because the bureaucrats paper over the details and don't allow government to understand that it's more than just flying around in a helicopter and shooting a bunch of animals, doing a hotspot, or shooting a bunch of deer, as they've been also doing in New South Wales, because deer numbers in some places have been far too high, and property owners have been prepared to allow them onto the properties to cull their deer numbers down. They're not prepared to accept any of that. So one of the things that we're trying to push forward is to say, well, look, you've got 260,000 licensed shooters, mostly hunters, in New South Wales. Probably 230,000 of them might be in some way be willing to participate in a program that was integrated for the first time at the grassroots level into a conservation hunting concept across the state. And I'm now talking about the deer numbers, especially on the coast, north and south of Sydney, and also west of Sydney in the national parks, are becoming now a real problem. And they have no tool in the toolbox. You can't fly a helicopter over a peri-urban environment shooting deer on a 100-acre block with 2 or 3 houses around it. It's just not going to work. So what happens, of course, is that these animals, sort of just multiply and multiply and multiply, and cars hit them, and all those sort of things go on. The government hasn't got a solution for it. Well,
so what is the solution from your perspective, Robert, in these 100-acre blocks?
Well, what we're saying is there is a solution. I mean, I've just did an experiment myself last year. I got permission on a block up the coast where rooster deer now are, and rooster deer have been there for probably 20 years or 30 years, but the reality is now the numbers are really starting to grow because nobody is killing them. And they, through my cousin who lives up there, I got access onto a block with one house on it. They're all the same size around that area, about 120-acre block. And I went and saw the owner, and he said, "Yeah, Robert, just come and go as you please. See what you can do with these deer." Well, the experiment is, what do I need to do in that environment to get the numbers down? He can't grow anything on his place. I mean, not that it's a lifestyle block. All he does is cut the grass. But if he wants to grow anything, the deer just eat everything. So he said, come and do it. So last February, I started the process. Now, the deer there, as soon as you turn up in daylight with a gun, they know what you are. There's no question of it. And bang, they go nocturnal. So what I did from February through to August, I culled, I think it was 8 or 9 rooster. Okay, 8 or 9. It was 9, I think I shot over probably 4 or 5 trips, maybe a bit more. And when I came back from overseas in January, I rang Warren. I said, what's the deer situation like? Because I was thinking about, well, if there's a couple more turned up, I'll go in there. He said, I haven't seen one since last October. He said, they're gone. Now, that's not a permanent solution. They will be back because
But
the
that's how
numbers are
you
just
created.
growing
You think
everywhere
you
else.
created a landscape of fear and have pushed them out, pushed them off?
Yeah, and the deer know it. And we saw a lot of deer. I saw a lot of deer not on his place coming and going. And so the next part of my experiment was to, he's on a little peninsula, for example, and there's another 3 or 4 or 5 blocks running up the peninsula, and they have deer issues as well. So what I'm saying is that if you're serious about trying to help control these numbers, and by the way, all these places back up to national parks, so all the deer are moving through the national parks and onto the coastal environment where they, obviously there's better feed, and also, as I said, they're peri-urban. They go right out around Foster and all those places. Now, if there's big populations on a national park, they can fly around with helicopters and shoot them, but they can't do that in an urban environment. They can't do that around Wollongong, for example, where there are small blocks, and the rooster are coming down onto the highway and being hit and causing accidents and a lot of damage. So there's a potential solution to get involved at that level if government's prepared to address it. There's not enough money in the treasury to try to pay shooters who professionally do it. It just isn't going to
But
be.
the solution
not
that
happen.
you just presented is a viable one right now, right? Hunters just need to knock on people's doors and say, "Can I get permission to hunt these blocks?"
That's right, and it needs to be promoted as part of a integrated program endorsed by the government. Then people will be more likely to say, yeah, okay, come on board and see what you can do. And I say, we've also got technology now we didn't have 10 years ago, and that's all the thermal gear you can buy, thermal scopes and all that sort of stuff. So you can do a job, and I'm not pretending for one moment that that's hunting, in the classic sense.
Well,
but it's all part of a mix of what you can do.
Right. Is suppressors legal in Australia?
Excuse me. There in New South Wales, and I think it's probably pretty much the same in every state. They're a prohibited weapon in New South Wales, and we've been talking to the government about that. And part of what we're trying to convince them to do is to say, well, look, if you get a license and you become a conservation hunter, then what you should be able to do is use that as an application and that the police then have to issue you with a suppressor or a moderator, or in our legislation, it's actually called a silencer. So I think, and again, the argument's pretty clear with the example I just outlined to you, that if I had the opportunity to put a moderator on my 270, I wouldn't have just killed one deer at the time. I would have probably killed 2 or 3, and it would have made it much more efficient. And the other thing is that when you're doing this, you're not wasting the meat either. There's no waste involved. What you're doing is, and I did it. Every single animal I killed, I grellicked it, and we took the meat, and I distributed it out to friends of mine who like eating it, including my cousin. So it sort of ticks a lot of boxes, and it's just a matter of trying to change the paradigm that the various, and it's the bureaucrats that are doing this. It's not so much the government. You can convince the politician you've got a good argument, but when you go back and talk to the bureaucrats, no, we can't do that. Oh, no, this is all too hard, because they've got an ingrained beneficial interest in maintaining the failed paradigm. That's what it gets down to.
Yeah. Robert, explain, in New South Wales, you have national parks, national forests, state parks. You have all those things?
Yeah. You first of all, it's all designated some sort of Crown land. So it's all owned by the Crown, in other words, controlled by the government. National parks are are the biggest estate in the state, and they're all basically lock it up and leave it. Just, you're not allowed to go in there. You're not allowed to shoot there. You're not allowed to, most parts of it, you're not allowed to bushwalk. You can't do any bloody thing in it.
What?
Yeah.
So tell me where this is coming from. So this idea that, removing people from areas is good for areas is crazy.
This is the green agenda that they're creating wilderness. It's wilderness, and all that happens, of course, is that everything grows and everything burns, and that's where it goes. The second part you've got is what we call the state forest estate. Now, the state forests really were forests put aside for primarily harvesting timber and growing and harvesting timber. And they've continually been attacked by greenies.
Saying that, the state forests?
Yeah, and that's something we got done back in 2002. We got our and even the current hunting program that runs to this day, we got that state forests, or most of it, declared for conservation or mostly recreational hunting. And it's been an absolute standout success, and you're talking about hunting everything from, deer, pigs, goats, foxes, feral cats, rabbits, hares, all those non-natives, that they are fair game, except horses, because at the time when we set it up, that was the government that banned horse shooting. Now, what I've said to the current government, I said, look, again, it's if the previous government had allowed us to kill horses, you probably wouldn't have the problem you've got in Kosciuszko National Park today, because it's ringed with some very large state forests that are open to hunting. And but anyway, that's just by the by. But the reality is that they're addressing that problem in the way they're addressing it now.
How difficult do you think that would be to change now, especially in the environment that the greenies are like, yeah, we want to shoot every single horse? How difficult would it be to add an amendment to the state forest and say, can we shoot horses there now?
I don't think you'd have a problem doing it now at all. I think the example is very clear cut, that if the horses were culled by licensed conservation hunters, nobody would care. And we certainly wouldn't care, as long as you were using adequate calibers. It's and I know because I questioned the national parks have a shooting team that operates 2 helicopters in the national parks, and they also run ground shooting program, and they shoot 300 Win mags on the ground, but they shoot 308s from the air. And
interesting.
Their idea of humane culling of horses is putting up to 17 shots into a horse to kill it, into its thorax. And from where the way I was brought up, that's not humane. But anyway, I had those arguments in the committee because I questioned a lot of that stuff around there.
One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is, especially this mantra that you just described, which is wilderness areas, get people out of these wilderness areas. That's the best thing for wildlife conservation. It's the best thing for habitat and whatnot. And that might have been true, and might have been the narrative that we needed in the 70s and 80s. But today, and when I say 70s and 80s, I mean because then it was acres and seas and sea of habitats, right? Just acres and acres of stuff with pockets of humans. Now there's humans everywhere, pressing on these landscapes. And so there's more need now. It's almost like it's flipped. There's more justification, more need for human intervention in these places to make sure that they're functioning correctly.
So I agree. And but that paradigm definitely has not taken hold in their so-called conservation. The word conservation is badly used in New South Wales and Australia. It's conservation is wrong. They're not conserving anything. What they're doing is protecting it. It's a protection exercise. If we keep you out, humans by definition are bad. Human intervention is bad. So therefore, we'll lock you out. Lock it up and leave it is what they do. And that's why we see the fire problems we have, That's why we see all sorts of other issues with our national parks. And there's a continual program of protest. Today, we're looking down the gun barrel of having extremely large swathe of hardwood state forest up the north coast of New South Wales being converted into a great koala national park. Now, koalas are not endangered in New South Wales. They're just not. But the politics of all of this, because the Greens have been running this line for so long, the Labor Party has to respond, otherwise they lose their seats to the Greens. And that's the long and the short of it, the politics of it. And so they bend over and sacrifice all of those timber communities up the north coast, just as they've sacrificed in previous governments all the timber industry and timber communities down in the south of our Strait.
The Great Koala National Park means no more timber use, no more timber production.
No, that's it. Finish, shut down. And so now the Greens have moved. Now they can see they've got that wind coming up. Now they're now moving to a conservation of the greater glider. Okay, in other words, this is one of the greater glider, and
it's like a squirrel, right? It's got it's got big wings, and not wings, but it's got that membranous material between its legs.
That's right.
It glides between trees. Yep.
Now they're supposed to be endangered, and so we move from one icon, and we've seen this before in the United States and other places in the world. They move from one icon species to the next, and run these campaigns and tell all sorts of garbage to people living in the inner city who don't know any better anyway. Not just inner city, the Greater Sydney, for example, and a lot of people, because of property prices, are moving out of tree changing and moving out to various parts of rural and regional New South Wales, and those people take their beliefs with them, and their beliefs are not well founded, and they dilute those local communities. They join the local councils, and effectively then over time start to turn good agricultural land into protected areas as well, and that's another whole discussion for another day. But
so you don't think it's funny that the timber folks, the people that are going back to that Koala National Forest, the timber folks don't have strong voices. They don't have strong political ties to the people to say, what are you guys doing?
Well, they have, the only political ties they have is that we represent them. That's what we do. That's one of the things we tend to work on regional policies like this, and we've been working with the timber industry, not just now, but going back to what I was talking about before, going back 20 years, we've been fighting every step of the way. But the reality is the numbers are always against us. And it doesn't matter whether it's slightly less a chance of it happening under a coalition government, shutting the timber industry down, but certainly under Labor, because they're directly challenged in their urban seats by the Greens, that they do it to try to shore up their credentials, their green credentials, and and we campaign. My colleague Mark Banasiak, that's his part of his constituency, and he actually is out actively campaigning for the timber industry, and we've done an awful lot of work with them in the last. This government's only been here for 2 years now. We've certainly been doing a lot of work with them for the last 2 years to try to mitigate and try to stop the Great Koala National Park.
Is it a done deal?
I don't think it is. But we'll see what happens, because there's one thing that is a problem for this government, and that is they're a minority government. They're minority in the lower house, and they're minority in the upper house. They don't. So
how do they get into power?
Well, because they stitch up a coalition with an informal coalition.
Labor themselves are a minority, and they stitch up a coalition.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. And but interestingly enough, they don't look for Green support. There's other independents in the lower house who give them support, and in the upper house, it's been the situation for 20 or nearly 30 years now that no government has had an absolute majority in the upper house. So. Because of people like us and the Greens and others.
Mm-hmm. Robert, if you looked into your crystal ball, what could be wins for hunting in New South Wales? in the next 10 years? Let's just say, look at it at a horizon of 10 years. We've talked about maybe like horses in state forests. Easy potential win, right?
Yeah, I think the challenge for us is to get access to more land.
I would
to hunt,
agree. Yeah.
and public land hunting. I mean, we have the New South Wales started from scratch with public land hunting. We had no public land hunting at all, and no tradition of it prior to 2002. Our
Oh, there
party
was no public land hunting in New South
no
Wales prior to 2002?
nothing.
Wow.
And that is the case in Queensland today. That is the
Yeah,
case in
correct.
South Australia today. But I would think that we're looking to expand the opportunities, because the third part of what we didn't finish talking about in terms of land that might be available is there's a lot of Crown land that simply exists, and there are some large blocks and small blocks and all over the state. And one of the things
What do you mean they just simply exist? They're not designated a national forest or anything like that?
Exactly, and they're not they're not part of a state forest. They're not part of a national park. Now, if the Greenies had a chance, they'd turn everything into a national park. You wouldn't be allowed to go anywhere. But anyway, these blocks, of course, some small, some large, would lend themselves, I think, properly managed, to allow for conservation hunting in the sort of models that we've been promoting for the last dozen years. I think the other wins that we can have is, I think we will get moderators. I think will happen at some stage. If any government is going to be serious, and I've got to say this government has certainly got its ears open to listening to us. Whether they follow our advice is another issue, but I think if you really want to be serious about controlling the spread of invasive species, and everything from deer to pigs to goats to all that sort of stuff, you really do need to improve the tools that hunters have got available to them.
Well, it seems antithetical, right? They have this line in the sand that is, we want to reduce and we need to manage these invasive species like pigs and deer and all that. And you present them. Here are tools that we can use. Use a moderator. It will double or triple the amount of invasive species that we can control. Open up these crowned lands. It'll tenfold, 100-fold the impact of hunting on these invasive species. The Great Australian Pig Hunt, great example. How many invasive pigs did the hunting community remove? And the economic impact of 327 million Aussie dollars.
Well,
more likely, and pushed into the rural communities, not in
that's right, exactly.
Sydney.
And look, when I was chairman of the Game Council, we started a program of doing economic measurement of the contribution. And the last survey that was done was back in 2023, I think it was. And it was about $508 million or $505 million.
It's like the third largest GDP in New South Wales.
In the state, yeah. And if you combine recreational fishing and hunting, those two together, they're the biggest. They're the biggest. So, or maybe just slightly behind the full count of agriculture, if you throw that in like that. Yeah. Maybe second. But so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's just a matter of having the political ability to get represented, and that's really the problem. Prior to our party coming along, there was no one that represented what we do, and it was always taken for granted that you would just be able to always go shooting, you'll always go fishing, but that's not true anymore. We've seen it where governments in the past have simply tried to shut these processes down because of basically an animal rights agenda or a greenie agenda. You should not be allowed to enjoy hunting. You should not be allowed to, go out and catch fish and eat them, and it's just, it's a silly thing, but unless you're represented politically and you've got a voice and you can make a difference, you will lose it all. There's no question of that. And certainly in Australia, you will. And part of that comes from the anti-gun approach that was manifest back in '96. And that still carries very strong today. Very strong.
Yeah. Well, Robert, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my man. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can obviously put a bigger fingerprint in what we do in Australia. We are growing. You don't know this, but I've got a really cool food, game food, wild venison peas coming out of the Bush River kitchen, out of the Hawkesbury River with John Rayleigh. And we invited a bunch of non-hunters from Sydney up to have a 5-course wild game dinner. And it was exceptional.
Sounds nice. Why didn't I get an invitation?
Well, you
I've
don't
been
quite
sold.
fit the demographic that we were after there, Robert Borsak.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. But the one thing I will mention just before you go, and that is that the government's indicated to me as part of this process is that they're willing to support the introduction of a pig bounty, and also a bounty on foxes and feral cats and wild dogs as well. Now, it's yet to be delivered, but I had a meeting with the Treasurer yesterday, and I got some pretty good signals from him that they were going to support it. So that will work in quite nicely with what we've got planned coming up, and it'll be the first time you've seen such a comprehensive approach to put money into the culling of these species into the pockets of farmers, into the pockets of shooters and hunters, but also do it on an accountable basis. In other words, we'll know exactly as Ned did, how many pigs have been killed, where they've been killed, et cetera, et cetera. So
get your data,
that can work
get the
really
data
well.
coming
get
in.
The data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's awesome news.
Thanks, Robert. We'll be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, my man.
All right. Thanks very much. Good to talk to you. Thanks, Robbie.
All right, Steph.